The wind had been kind all morning, carrying the smell of pine and lake water through our little camp on the far side of Lake Kabetogama. It was day 3 of our 5-day canoe trip, and the group was running smooth. No blisters, no lost paddles, no sore tempers. There were 5 of us. Me, my old buddy Tom, his sister Megan, a quiet guy named Luke who worked in wildlife research, and Carrie. Always laughing, always the first to dive into a cold lake. She was the heart of the group, really. We'd been drifting between islands that morning, stopping to fish and snack, when Carrie began coughing. At first, it was light, like she'd swallowed water wrong. But within minutes, her face turned pale, then flushed, and she gasped out, "I can't breathe." I'd seen allergic reactions before, but this was different. Her lips were swelling, her hands trembling. We dragged her canoe to shore, hearts hammering. "EpiPen!" Tom yelled. But Carrie just shook her head weakly. "Didn't bring it," she managed. We spread our packs open, hoping someone had something, anything. Luke found antihistamines, and Megan cradled Carrie's head, trying to keep her calm. The lake breeze suddenly felt cruel, too cold, too alive. "Carrie, what is it? What's happening?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She tried to speak, then coughed again. "Peanuts," she whispered, "in the trail mix." The absurdity hit us all. After 3 days of wild country, all our careful prep, and it was a handful of trail mix that could end it. Tom was already on the satellite communicator, fingers shaking as he tapped out the SOS to the ranger station. "Hold on, Carrie," he muttered, his voice breaking. She reached for my wrist suddenly, eyes glassy but intent. "There's something I should tell you," she said, each word scraping out of her throat. "If I don't, just promise you'll tell my mum." "Hey, don't talk like that," Megan said sharply, tears on her cheeks. "You're going to be fine. They'll get here soon." Carrie's grip tightened. "You need to know," she said, breath rasping. "It's not just the allergy. I'm sick. I've been sick for a while. The treatments weren't working anymore. And I wanted this trip before." She trailed off, too tired to finish. Tom froze. The communicator beeped, confirming the message had gone through. I remember the silence that followed, how even the birds seemed to hush, as if the forest itself was listening. Luke knelt beside her, steady and calm. "Okay," he said softly. "We've got you. You're not going anywhere, Carrie. Not today." I could feel my throat tighten. Around us, the pines swayed, whispering in the wind, and the sunlight broke through the clouds in trembling bands. We didn't know yet if help would reach us in time, but we knew in that moment that the trip had changed forever. The next half hour felt like a lifetime. We'd moved Carrie into the shade of a tall red pine, her breathing shallow but steady. Megan held her hand and whispered to her softly, words I couldn't quite make out. Tom kept checking the satellite messenger, watching for any reply from the rangers. The rest of us just sat in that heavy quiet, trying not to show the fear crawling up our spines. Then the message came through. "Rescue boat en route. ETA 90 minutes. 90 minutes? Out here, that might as well have been forever. Carrie's face was pale and damp with sweat. She tried to smile when she saw us reading the message, but it came out weak. "See? Told you. I'm fine," she whispered, though the effort of speaking made her grimace. Luke, always the calm one, knelt beside her again. "We need to slow your heart rate, okay? Just breathe with me." He counted softly, one hand steady on her shoulder, the other watching the rise and fall of her chest. When the rhythm of her breathing evened out a bit, Megan looked up at me, eyes rimmed red. "Did you know about her being sick?" I shook my head. "No, I thought she was training for that triathlon again this summer." Tom's jaw tightened. "She told me the same thing," he muttered. "Guess that was a cover." Carrie opened her eyes, weakly smiling. "I didn't want a pity trip," she croaked. "Didn't want anyone worrying every time I coughed or stopped to rest. I just wanted to be normal for a while." Her words hung there between us, soft and brittle. Luke poured a capful of lake water into his hand, dabbing it over her forehead. "You've got guts, Carrie," he said quietly. She gave a breathy laugh. "Stupidity, more like." After that, we all went quiet again. The forest was alive with afternoon sounds, distant loons, the slosh of the waves against the rocky shore, a squirrel chattering indignantly somewhere above us. But to me, it all sounded muffled, like the world had turned its volume down out of respect. Every few minutes, Tom would stand and scan the horizon. The lake stretched endlessly, a glittering sheet of blue and white caps, no sign of rescue. Megan murmured old stories from our past trips, just to keep Carrie awake. How she fell in the river on our first outing, or the time her tent collapsed in the rain. Carrie smiled faintly through it all, drifting in and out. Then, all at once, she stirred. "Promise me something," she said, eyes on me now, sharper than before. "When this is over, no more waiting. Don't waste the days like I did." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, throat tight. Somewhere across the lake, a motor's faint hum began to rise. We turned toward the sound, hope trembling between us like the shimmer of heat above the water. The hum grew louder, echoing across the still water until it filled the entire cove. We all turned toward the sound, me squinting into the sunlight reflecting off the lake. A small white rescue boat was cutting through the chop, leaving a silver wake behind it. I swear, in that moment, I'd never seen anything more beautiful. "Hang on, Carrie," Megan whispered. "They're almost here." But Carrie wasn't responding much anymore. Her breathing had slowed, her eyes half-lidded. Tom squeezed her shoulder, his voice shaking. "Hey, stay with us, okay? You promised me a rematch at Horseshoes when we got back." The boat drew closer, the sound of its motor mingling with the wind through the pines. I ran down to the rocky edge, waving both arms high, yelling until my throat hurt. The ranger at the bow waved back. "Hold tight," he shouted. "We'll be there in 2. Those 2 minutes felt endless. Luke and Megan worked to keep Carrie conscious, whispering her name, stroking her hair. Tom just crouched nearby, staring at his sister, his hands clenched white on his knees. I'd never seen him look so helpless. When the boat finally grounded against the rocks, the ranger and a medic leapt out. The medic was already opening a pack before his boots hit the shore. "Who's the patient?" he barked, though he could already see. "Carrie," Megan gasped. "Allergic reaction, nuts, EpiPen wasn't packed." The medic knelt beside her, calm and efficient. Within seconds, he'd injected the epinephrine and was checking her vitals. "Pulse weak but steady," he said to the ranger. "We're moving her now." We helped them lift her onto the stretcher. Her hand brushed mine as we carried her toward the boat, light, cold, barely there. She tried to say something, lips forming the start of a word, but no sound came. The medic looked up at us. "You did good," he said. "You probably saved her." When they motored off, I watched until the boat was just a speck against the distant shore. The lake had gone still again, like nothing had happened. Only the flattened grass where she'd been lying, the half-open bag of trail mix beside it, reminded me that it wasn't a bad dream. Tom sat down heavily on a rock. Megan leaned against him, crying quietly. Luke walked to the water's edge, staring out. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Tom broke the silence. "She knew," he said softly. "She knew she was sick. I can't believe she didn't tell me." I didn't answer. I just kept watching the lake, that endless blue expanse swallowing the sound of the motor until there was nothing left but the wind and the faint call of a loon somewhere out of sight. We had 2 days left on our trip, but in that moment, none of us knew if we'd stay or pack up. Everything we'd come out here for, the peace, the adventure, the escape, suddenly felt small beside what had just happened. Still, as I looked up at the sky, a thought crossed my mind. Maybe that was exactly why Carrie had wanted to come. We didn't speak much that evening. The rangers had radioed us after reaching the mainland. Carrie was stable and being airlifted to a hospital in International Falls. Relief washed through the group like a wave, but it left behind a strange emptiness too. Tom sat close to the fire, elbows on his knees, staring into the flames. The light made his face look older, carved with shadows. Megan was beside him, half wrapped in her sleeping bag, though the night was mild. Luke was tending the fire, his motions slow and deliberate, like he was afraid to break the silence that hung over us. The rest of the world seemed to go on as if nothing had changed. The lake lapping softly against the rocks, loons calling back and forth across the water, a distant breeze stirring through the birches. I could smell the smoke from our fire blending with pine resin, and for a while, I just sat there breathing it in, trying to anchor myself. Tom finally spoke. "She told you," he said quietly, eyes fixed on the fire. "About being sick?" "Yeah," I said, "right before the boat came." He nodded slowly, jaw tightening. "She always hated people worrying about her, even when we were kids. Mom would fuss, and she'd just sneak off to climb trees or swim too far out. She didn't like being the fragile one." Megan sniffled, wiping at her eyes. "She just wanted one normal trip," she whispered. "I wish she'd said something." Luke poked at the fire with a stick, sending a swirl of sparks into the night. "Maybe that was her way of saying something," he murmured. "By coming, by being here." None of us answered, but we all knew he was right. We sat there until long after the fire burned down to coals. The stars came out thick and bright, the kind of night sky you can only see miles from any road. Somewhere across the lake, a wolf howled, a long, low sound that made the hair on my arm stand up. It wasn't menacing, though. It was lonely, mournful. Tom finally sighed and stood. "We'll paddle out in the morning," he said. "Head for the ranger station. Maybe they'll have more news." Nobody argued. We were all thinking the same thing. The trip was over. As I crawled into my tent that night, I could still hear the quiet crackle of the fire and the gentle lap of water against the shore. I thought about what Carrie had said, about not wasting time, about living before the clock ran out. I lay there listening to the sounds of the night, the ache of fear and gratitude mixing in my chest. And for the first time, I realized how fragile the line really is between adventure and tragedy, between life as you plan it and life as it unfolds when the trail takes a turn you never saw coming. Morning came pale and quiet, the kind of dawn that feels hesitant to break. Mist drifted low across the lake, curling between the islands like breath in cold air. The campsite was still. No birds yet, no ripples, just the hush that settles after something big has happened. Tom was already up, packing gear with a kind of tired determination. Megan brewed coffee in silence, her movements slow but steady. Luke stood near the shore, staring into the fog as if waiting for it to part and give us some kind of sign. None of us talked much during breakfast. We didn't need to. The air was thick with unspoken thoughts, with relief and guilt, with the sharp awareness of how close we'd come to losing her. By mid-morning, we'd loaded the canoes and pushed off, the blades cutting cleanly through the glassy water. Every paddle stroke felt heavier than it should have. The lake was mirror still, reflecting the pines and skies so perfectly that at times it felt like we were floating in between two worlds, the one above and the one below. After an hour, the ranger station came into view. A figure stood waving on the dock. It was the same medic who'd taken Carrie the day before. As we drew close, he called out, "She's awake. She asked about you all this morning." The relief hit so hard it almost knocked the breath out of me. Tom dropped his paddle into his lap and just sat there, head bowed. Megan covered her face with both hands, crying quietly. Even Luke grinned for the first time since it all began. When we docked, the medic helped us unload, giving a few more details. Carrie had stabilised overnight, was talking, joking even. They'd caught the reaction in time. "Tough one, your friend," he said, smiling. That night, after calling the hospital and hearing her voice, raspy but warm, still teasing us for panicking, we set up camp one last time near the ranger station. It wasn't the wild remote spot we'd planned, but it felt right. The stars were faint behind thin clouds, the fire small and calm. Tom raised his mug. "To Carrie," he said quietly. "To Carrie," we echoed. We sat there for a long time, not telling stories this time, but simply being there, together, alive, grateful. The lake stretched dark and endless beyond the firelight, and I realised how every trip changes you, even when you think you're just out for a few days in the woods. Carrie's words echoed in my head. Don't waste the days. Out there, under the whispering pines, I promised myself I wouldn't. And I think the rest of them did too.